Hey guys, how's it going? Travis Young here. Pardon my scratchy voice. I've been recovering off of a bit of a cold. But you may have recognized that song I was whistling. It's a song called Don't Worry, Be Happy. And there's definitely something here that I've been talking to a lot of people recently, and I want people to not have to worry. But the problem is, there's so much in our society today that teaches you not necessarily how to worry, but we're based on this idea of being in a culture where if you don't know what happens, the only thing that you can do is worry. And so I want to give you some tools to equip you how you don't have to worry, and kind of like show you some reasons as to how it actually doesn't do anything useful for you. First of all, I want to start off with a nursery rhyme. You're like, okay, Travis, nursery rhyme, cool. But this one's actually really incredible. I'm currently reading a book called How to Stop Worrying and Start Living by Dale Carnegie. I'll post a link in the comments section, link to the book. I would consider checking it out. It's changed a lot of the things that I have done. Not saying that I worry a lot, but it's given me lots of practical tools on how to actually equip myself and other people on how to limit that. So here's the nursery rhyme. For every ailment under the sun, there be a remedy, or there be none. If there be a remedy, then try and find it. But if there be none, then never mind it. I think that is such a powerful idea that, and it comes back to lots of what Dale Carnegie has discussed in his book. And that is the idea of, if you can do something to change what you are worried about, then do it. But if you can't do anything to change what you are worrying about, then stop worrying. And I know that is easier said than done. Trust me, there's things in my life that I still find myself worrying about. But I can give you a few practical examples of what this looks like. Say you get laid off from your job, like I did 2 weeks ago. You can worry about getting a job, or you can do something and you can go, you know what, there's something in this situation that I can actually control. I can send out tons of resumes. I can go to employers and hand in resumes. I can talk to people and make connections with other people in the hopes that they have connections that can actually hook me up and get me a job again. And so you can either sit and worry, or you can seek to actually control what you can control and then stop worrying about it. Because you've done everything within your power to actually go out and create a result around being consistent in your life. Another one for me today, I was going for coffee with somebody, and usually I bring my phone with me, and driving down the road, I realized that the phone wasn't hooked up, and I got there and I was like, oh no. And so instantly my head starts thinking about what I could have possibly done with my phone. And for some reason, I think I thought I left it on top of my car, and it probably rolled off somewhere driving down the road. So I have two choices in the midst of this circumstance. I can worry about where my phone is and spend all this mental power, this mental mind power. I call it your mental bandwidth. There's only so much bandwidth that you have for things in your life. And so if you constantly fill it up with worry and fear and all these negative emotions, you're never going to actually have room to actually go out there and create something that'll allow you to have a great life, because you're always concerned on things that aren't doing you any good anyways. And so sitting in my car, I was like, what's the worst that could happen? Well, my phone could be on top of my car. And so what I would tell you is, if you are worrying about something, figure out a way to have a concrete result around why you are worrying and how you can actually correct that worry. So for me, I was like, well, if my phone is on top of my car and I drove away and it fell off, I won't know where that is. And I can't do anything about that now because I'm on my way for coffee. But when I'm done my coffee, I'll go home, I'll open my MacBook, and I'll Find My iPhone app, and I'll check and see where my phone is. Now, better yet, I'll check around my apartment first, and my phone could be there in my apartment. And so have a solution to the worry in your life, and by having a solution, by coming to terms with the worst that can be possibly happen, you can only improve on where you go from there. I was Skyping one of my friends the other day, and I guess this is just the last thing that I'll share. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on what worry has done in your life, but other practical examples and practical things that you have done to correct worry in your life. But I was telling him, and I'll relate another story because I believe practical application is the greatest gift that we have to give to other people. But I was telling him, there's kind of like 3 steps when you are going through worry. Whether you're worried about somebody's reactions towards you, whether you're worried about something that you did and the implications that may result because of that. But there's 3 steps that you can take. And the first one is this. Come to terms, think of the worst that could happen, the absolute worst that could happen. And don't spend a lot of mental brain power on it, but think of it. And once you have thought of it, come to terms with, is this something that I can actually accept? And if you can come to terms with that, then you can then move beyond it. You can then seek to improve upon the worst that could possibly happen. But if you're okay with the worst that could happen, then you are at a place where you can then step beyond that. And then number 2 is think about how you can improve upon what the worst that can happen is. And as you set those goals and you kind of come to terms with those ideas, then you can then think about which of those would be the best things that you can apply to your life, and then do that. And so I'll give you an example from the book, and I'll give you an example from my life. One time I was actually supposed to go to Edmonton after work, and I needed my shoes. I had my suit and everything in my car, but driving to work, I was like, oh no, I don't have my shoes. And so that allows me to worry a lot, and I could spend all day worrying about that, or I could come up with a practical solution and come to terms with the worst that could happen. So the worst that could happen is after work, if my shoes aren't in my car, I'm gonna have to drive back home, and then after I drive back home, then I'm gonna have to drive to Edmonton, and I'll probably be half an hour late for the meeting or whatever it is that I'm going to. And so now that I have a practical solution for the worst case scenario, I can stop worrying. I can, because it empowers me to do so. So what happened is I was like, okay, I have my plan. After work, I'm gonna look around in my car. If my shoes are there, then we go to Edmonton. If they're not, I drive home, I get them, and I go to Edmonton. So sure enough, what happened? At the end of my workday, I went to my car and I rummaged around, and I realized that I had tossed my shoes in my car. And so I put my shoes on, put my suit on, and I drove off to Edmonton. And this empowered me to not have to spend all day worrying, and I could put my mental bandwidth towards other things like working properly, working safely, having good conversations with the people who I work with, and just enjoying my day rather than worrying. A more extreme example from the book, How to Stop Worrying and Start Living, was Dale Carnegie talked about how there was this man who was sitting in the hospital bed, and he was just absolutely sick. They were doing stomach pumps, and they were feeding him tablespoons of all this stuff. And what ended up happening is he was just one day, he was like, man, this is not how I want to live my life. I want to do something different. I want to do something better. And so what he did is he came to terms with where he was at. He was like, I'm going to die. He's like, but I want to spend the end of my life actually enjoying my life. So this is what he did. He came to terms with where he was at, but then he sought to improve upon his situation. He wanted to travel. So what he did is he said, I'm going to travel the world. I'm going to get on a boat, and I'm just going to head off somewhere incredible. And all the doctors were like, you can't do that. And he was like, well, I'd rather do that and die than spend the rest of my days just suffering here in this hospital. So this is what he did. He got a coffin made for himself because he knew it was probably very high probability that he was going to die on this trip, and he didn't want to burden anyone else or suffer or anything like that. So what he did is he got a coffin made for himself, and he hopped on a ship, and he started flushing his own stomach. He started feeding himself. But he found that as he traveled, as he did the things that he enjoyed, all the stress and everything started to leave his body, and he actually got healthier and healthier, to the point where sooner or later he was sampling outlandish foods. He was smoking cigars with all the crew members and everything. And it was in the midst of him coming to terms with where he was at, but seeking to improve upon the situation he found himself in, that he found himself healthy again, that he found himself able to actually do things that he had never been able to do before. And so I guess that's the big lesson to be learned from that, is come to terms with where you are at. Come to terms with the circumstances that you find yourself in. But once you are there, seek to improve upon that. Find a solution to your problem. And then maybe you have to think up of 2 or 3 or 4 different solutions, but pick the best one and seek to move on beyond that. And then I guess just to reiterate again, seek to control what you can control in your life. If you cannot control the things that are ailing you, then stop worrying about them. And I know that sounds difficult, and it may be, but you are getting nowhere simply worrying about them. I guess in that book, Dale Carnegie talks about how lots of doctors state that 80% of all the patients could rid themselves from the ailments that they have if they only were able to control their mind. And so I guess, yeah, that's it. Don't do this. Don't do this. Because it'll wear on your relationships. It'll wear on your mind. You'll become tired. You'll be fatigued. You'll be unhealthy. And it's just not a good place to be. Because there's ways around this. There's ways where you can get better, where you can be better. And so I just want to share that rhyme again with you one more time. For every remedy under the sun. For every ailment under the sun, there be a remedy or there be none. If there be a remedy, then try and find it. But if there isn't one, then never mind it. I hope you guys have an amazing day. Go out there and grow, keep learning, keep changing. We can all change this world together. Peace out.